I ask that you accept the opening statement, kind of like a preview. You know, you catch on TV before you go see a movie. Not to be silly, but just an idea. It's an opening statement of what we believe the evidence will show. But what you hear from witnesses and receive in the form of exhibits are the actual evidence. So it's to kind of give you an idea of what's to come. And we believe the evidence will show that there was a Cinco de Mayo party at some friends of Barry, and Chris knew from another fellow he knew, and they got together, and that's where maybe Chris and Barry first met and got in contact. And you'll hear at that time the severe heart issues Barry was having, and the medical issues, and then soon after Chris moves in to the apartment. And you'll hear it was very common because Barry was so concerned about his heart issues and medical situation that they got up like super early, 4 or 5 in the morning, and went out walking from all the way, if you see a map, you'll see like Beach Parkway, all the way down to where the Starbucks is, and just multiple miles. And you'll hear later about going to this cruisers bar where they hung out, and you'll hear walking home from there, so these long distance walks were not uncommon. And it was Barry trying to get his health back in order, and that they walked home that evening. And as said, you'll see videos showing them kind of walking up Del Prado, going back. And then you'll hear before that, when they were at cruisers, that there wasn't any big scene or anything. They just kind of left. Like they were there for a few hours. And then there's a couple different parties there. The bartender, they kind of knew, and different people that knew Barry, knew Chris. And may have left a little bit different time, but you'll see them on video right next to each other, walking up Del Prado and getting home. And then you'll hear later from a neighbor that heard some kind of noises. And was it Barry saying, "I'm leaving, I'm tired of this idiot"? And Chris saying, no, don't leave. And Barry leaving because he was still getting on these grinder apps and some other app called Sniffies to still meet other men and date. Because Chris wasn't somebody he had known for years or anything. He had met at the party, and then he pretty quickly moved in, and he was kind of helping take care of him. You'll hear he wasn't working. Barry gave him some cards, said feel free to use them. If anybody asks, Barry said you can use it. And so the use of the cards he was allowed to do. And then you'll hear about Airbnbs. You'll even hear before this night of cruisers, they'd gone to one of their friends, Miguel. He's in a relationship with Tom, and Tom's birthday, and they rented an Airbnb to have the party at. And then you'll hear about Chris, and we believe the evidence will show that at some point an Airbnb was rented and it wasn't in the best condition, and Chris lost his account. So then he started using his brother Tyler's account. And so when he rented the Airbnb to leave Barry's place and say, well, I guess we're breaking up or this is over, maybe I should go elsewhere, that this account was used, but nobody's trying to hide anything about who's there. He was in constant contact with the lady when he went out to Clewiston. She saw him. He was out exercising. There's nothing nefarious going on. Then you'll hear when Chris and Miguel talk, and the idea about reporting Barry missing comes up, and then that's done, and you'll hear that. And then you'll just hear a lot of speculation as to things after the fact. And so what I ask you to do is wait before you make any formulated or fixed opinions until you've heard everything in this case. And not try to take everything days after the fact to speculate, what may or may not have happened. But you will, for a fact, hear about very serious heart issues, and you heard about his weight loss, and you'll hear that from his friends and family. And And at the end of this trial, we'll come up and ask you, we'll argue to you that the evidence is not proven that any murder was committed and there's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We'll ask you to find the defendant not guilty.
State and call their first witness.
Yes, Judge. State calls Mr. Miguel Blanco.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. You may begin with your opening.
May it please the court?
Yes.
Opposing counsel? No! Whimpering. Those are the last noises that were heard from Barry Schmalbach's apartment on July 19th, 2023. An apartment that he shared with the defendant, Christopher Davis. What follows that slamming, the no, and whimpering, is the defendant doing a search on his cell phone for Walmart near me. Going to Walmart, and at Walmart, buying chocolate milk, not one, but 2 rolls of duct tape, and a 12-foot by 24-foot heavy-duty tarp. Today you're going to hear about the victim, Barry Schmalbach, as well as the defendant, Christopher Davis. You're going to hear that Barry, as he was known to friends, was loved. He was always in communication with them. He called them. He texted him. He was never not next to his phone. Quick responses. Even if he was in a different country, he still would get a hold of them. You'll hear that he was meticulous about keeping everything clean. His car, which he basically would say he lived out of mostly, as well as his house. He was not someone to be okay with items that were in disarray or being a mess. Barry was from Chicago and moved down to Florida in 2022. But he still kept friends in Chicago. He kept in communication with one of his best friends, Rosalie Malico. You'll hear that he had some medical issues, and because of the medical issues, he lost about 100 pounds. And he was walking daily. A walk that the defendant started joining him on when they met in May of 2023. They met at a Cinco de Mayo party, and within weeks, the defendant and the victim were living together. And members of the jury, within 2.5 months, the victim was gone. There's been no activity on the victim's accounts, his cell phone, his financial records, nothing, since July 19th, 2023. And the person that saw the victim last, the defendant, Christopher Davis. You will hear from a multitude of witnesses, one of them being Miguel Blanco. Miguel Blanco was one of Barry's closest friends here. You'll hear that they met working at Restaurant Depot, and they kept in communication for years, even moving down to Florida. You'll hear that Miguel actually had a key to Barry's condo due to the fact of Barry having the heart condition. You'll hear that Miguel had to tell the defendant to file a missing persons report, and that Miguel actually had to file one himself. And members of the jury, you're going to hear over and over again as the state brings you a multitude of photographs, videos, and other items and testimony from Miguel as well as other people that Barry is not in any of the photos. He is not in any of the videos. The person that is the defendant, Christopher Davis. You are going to hear that over and over and over and over again, whether it be in Walmart, Target, Ace Hardware, or disposing of evidence. That is what you are going to hear. Now, to explain the investigation, we have a retired detective. His name is Bryce Bierman. He was with the Cape Coral Police Department until 2024. This is one of his last cases that he worked. And he is going to come today, as well as the rest of this week, and he is going to explain to you, day by day, by day, by day, the actions that the defendant took after he killed Barry. Now, members of the jury, you are not going to see Barry's body. You are not going to be hearing from a medical examiner in this case. We don't have a body. What we do have are the defendant's actions. The defendant buying duct tape, neighbors witnessing something heavy being moved. Sounds like a plastic tarp. The defendant buying air fresheners, renting an Airbnb, buying a pickaxe, buying a shovel, disclosing of those items, and giving a multitude of stories. Stories that all conflict. So if we begin with July 19th, you're going to hear from witnesses, such as Ruth, who's a neighbor. You're going to hear from a Lyft driver who took Barry and the defendant to a place called Cruisers. It's a bar in the Cape. You're going to hear that while at the bar at the Cape, he texted his friend Rosalie and said, "I'm at the bar with my BF, but I am so done with the BS. Please call me tomorrow. I miss you so much." Then you're going to hear a couple hours later, Rosalie got a text back. And it didn't make sense. It didn't sound like something Barry would send her. And you'll hear what that response was and how she knew it wasn't Barry that sent it. You're going to hear from a bartender as well as another patron who'll say that it looked like something was amiss between Barry as well as the defendant.